Thanks for coming. Welcome to the 2024 Prioritization of Cybersecurity and Legacy Modernization Projects kickoff. Here's the agenda. We'll do some introductions so you know who you're talking to. We're going to talk about the background of PCLS. We're going to do a high-level overview of the content. We'll talk about accessing it via the Spectrum portal. We'll talk about the process and submission of the PCLS, and we'll always have plenty of time for questions at the end. Do some quick introductions. My name's Dave Tucker. I'm the Director of Strategic Digital Services here at DIR, and I work in the Chief Technology Office. I'm joined by Robert Benajam, who's an Enterprise Architect, also in Strategic Digital Services. Linda?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Linda Markey, and I'm the Director of the Security Policy and Planning Group. And we've also got Greg McCarty from the GRC team. He's the Cybersecurity Analyst. Thanks, Dave.
You bet. We also have a couple of DIR SMEs here, just in case, to answer those questions. Now, this team is responsible for PCLS, and that's a key component of the LAR. We submit this PCLS report to the Legislative Budget Board, or LBB, by October 1st. The PCLS is an opportunity for agencies to provide additional awareness around their LAR submissions with the LBB. The legislature, folks, has so much information that having the PCLS report is a really good guide for them when they're developing budgets and informing the strategy for the state's future IT agenda. This team has worked hard on this and are the real SMEs, and will probably be the ones to answer your questions, more likely them than me. But if we can't, we'll write them down and we'll get back to you. The PCLS process hasn't significantly changed from previous year's PCLS sessions. So if you did this 2 years ago or 4 years ago, it's going to be very similar. And for what it's worth, DIR are filling out this form too, just like everybody else. Now we'll answer questions at the end, but you can also post in the chat panel if you like, and we'll try to answer them, or the Q&A, not chat, pardon me, in the Q&A panel if you like, and we'll try to answer them as we go. And as Linda said, this webinar is recorded and it's going to be posted on DIR's YouTube channel. Now let's talk about some background, this whole thing. Good old Texas Government Code Section 2054. Per this statute, the PCLS report is due to the LBB no later than October 1st on even-numbered years. 2024 is an even-numbered year. There's no solid deadline for agency submissions. It's in line with your LAR deadline. And because this is confidential information, only authorized folks can see the full report. It's protected data. The very first PCLS report was back in 2016, and this will be the 5th report. If you look there at those years from 16 to 18 to 20 to 22, you'll see the funding fluctuations, biennium over biennium, and you'll also see steady increases. But the takeaway here, folks, is that it's a powerful tool, and it can really illustrate the need for modernization. Take a look at the content. So DIR is tasked with administering this questionnaire, and we have since 2016. We get this report and the APM assessments for the applications that are associated with the PCLS projects, and we create this report. A little more detail about that's on the next slide. But the takeaway here is that this report allows agencies to demonstrate the risks and impacts of failing to address cybersecurity and legacy modernization projects. Now, this slide, you may have seen one like this before. This slide represents the flow of content that feeds into the PCLS project submissions. In Section 4 of the Information Resources Deployment Review, or IRDR, agencies completed an inventory of servers and software. They also had an opportunity to create assessments for business applications. And that's the APM error that you see in the middle there. There are questions in the PCLS questionnaire specific to the inventory, like number of servers and the software impacted, and you'll have the opportunity, and you'll have the opportunity to relate the business applications to a project. We're going to talk about that as we go through section by section, through the questionnaire when we get to section 2. Now let's talk about the content of the questionnaire itself. It's broken down into individual parts. Now, depending on the type of project, you'll only fill out the relevant sections. And I'm going to hear me say this a couple of times, projects are either cybersecurity projects or legacy modernization projects. See the structure there, the 6 parts? Part 1 and 2 are completed for both types of projects, both cybersecurity projects and legacy projects. Cybersecurity will complete 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. And for legacy projects, you only do parts 1, 2, and 4. And we're going to summarize each part of this meeting. In part 1, general information, you paint the picture of your current situation and desired future situation. It's about 20 questions. Use these definitions that you see here on the screen to decide if it's a cybersecurity or a legacy project. It's one or the other. Now, please keep in mind that it has to fit into those criteria. If it doesn't meet those criteria here, it shouldn't be part of the PCLS report. It's for cybersecurity and legacy modernization projects. But in this section, the questions allow you to describe what the project is and its qualitative benefits. The more information here, the clearer the picture of the projects and the importance of them to your business objectives. You'll see on here, as well as in the PCLS instructions, which are a key part of this whole thing, and in Spectrum itself, this criteria for cybersecurity or legacy modernization project. You have to memorize these criteria right now. They're all over the place. They're in this deck, they're on the reference guide, and they're even in Spectrum itself. One more thing, folks. When you actually name the project, try to be consistent and call it the same thing that you call it in your LAR request. Linda, Mark, any questions or anything so far? We good to go?
I'm not seeing any questions at this point, Dave.
Great. Thank you, Linda. We're already on to part 2. In part 2, business process and application information, that's where you associate the business applications with the projects. You must have an APM assessment that is less than 4 years old for all associated applications in a proposed project. Also, please note, this is a DIR definition of a business application. It's the name of a group of functions, including data, hardware, and software. So the business applications listed are those that were identified during the biennial IRDR. Excuse me. If an impacted business application does not appear on this list, you can use the Add New button to include additional applications as you're filling out the PCLS. I'll say it again. Please note all identified business applications require an assessment in the last 4 years, and that all required fields need to be filled out. Required fields are noted, of course, with an asterisk. Now, the applications can be directly or indirectly related. If it's an old system, it's being replaced or modernized or improved, it's directly related. It's indirectly related. The benefit's secondary. Say, you need to replace an old hardware, and you move business applications to the cloud from like some dusty old server. These applications are indirectly impacted if they're just along for the ride. Still in part 2, here's where we associate the business applications with the PCLS submission. You see that arrow pointing to the lookup? You can click on that and you can search for and identify one or more related applications. The same process applies to indirectly. See how there's one for directly and one for indirectly. Same thing. So that's it for part 2. Part 3 is about cybersecurity, legacy, and controls. Issues and controls, excuse me, not legacy. This part focuses on the narrative components of a cybersecurity project. The cybersecurity issues, challenges, future considerations, and the cybersecurity controls, meaning the current safeguards and the countermeasures that are already in place. Really, what's the current state? What improvements can you make? How will the project benefit your organization? We ask what's in place to reduce the risk or impact of a security incident, including what types of data are associated. And this section also asks about regulatory concerns, specific vulnerabilities, related costs, stuff like that. Please include any information acquired through audits or assessments that pertain to the risk and impact related to your project. It's just valuable information. Now, this part's a narrative. but there's also specific questions about cybersecurity later in the questionnaire. Basically, folks, what's the situation today and what you expect the outcome to be if funded. And remember, the more context, the more information, the more specificity in your narrative, the better. The more business intelligence that we have, the more informed the ultimate recommendations will be. Part 4, back to legacy projects. 14 questions around modernization benefits, cost benefit analyses, modernization scope, and system characteristics. Although there are a lot of questions, like it's a high number of questions, they're actually pretty straightforward, and it's not too hard to answer them if you just go through them one by one. Now, within the questionnaire, we ask for a return on investment in a narrative, and we include a link to this business case workbook that you see here on the screen in the instructions and in Spectrum to help with the methodology. That's what you see here. Now, look, you can use any methodology you want. You don't have to use this one, but it's a useful and powerful tool that you can use, and it's right there for you to use if you want to. So we'll give you a link, like I said, in this deck, in the instructions, and Spectrum itself, if you choose to use this ROI tool. Now, part 5 and 6 are about cybersecurity. This part's more quantitative as opposed to qualitative. What would it be like if this project wasn't funded? Is the likelihood of an incident going to go down? And if the project was not funded, what would be the reputational impacts, operational impacts, etc.? So parts 5 and 6 help us prioritize based on the likelihood and impact. One change here from 2022 is if you look there at part 5, on the left there, 5 bullets down, we changed threat frequency to third-party risk because we finally figured out that you're at risk all the time. So we kept the question number, but we made that question a little smarter. That's it for the high-level view of the content of the questionnaire itself. And it should be live today, I think, June 20th, auspicious day. PCLS is live. It's the first day of summer. It's the summer solstice. And it's my firstborn's 15th birthday. Elizabeth is 15 today.
Perfect.
Sorry, I had to throw it out there.
The perfect storm of goodness, Dave.
That's right. That's right.
I'm still not seeing any questions. I'm becoming suspicious that the folks on this call have submitted projects via this method before. So
go figure.
Linda, actually, I'm sorry, Dave. I believe I saw a question earlier. Someone was asking what an APM is. I don't think that got addressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's hey, Robert, why don't you take that one?
It's being answered, Dave. Thank you.
It's in the chat? Okay. So June 20th, today. The instructions are also already out there, and they're definitely worth a read before starting. These instructions, folks, like IKEA, read all the instructions before you start, okay? Doesn't take that long. It's not actually super long. But read all the way through so you know the whole scope of what you're about to fill out, and then go back and start after read the whole thing. And then you can start entering the information into Spectrum when you're ready.
I do have a question for you now, Dave.
Okay.
Did you say that parts 5 and 6 are for cyber items, not end of life? Is there clarification about that?
I think they're for cyber. But
yes, they are cybersecurity related questions.
Thanks, Robert.
Yeah. Any other questions or raised hands?
There's another question right now. How is this to be entered into the STS LAR? So we kind of talked about this earlier, and in terms of submitting this with your LAR, our recommendation is that you go and speak within your organization because it could be different. I don't know what each of your processes and procedures look like. So in terms of putting this information into your LAR, the one point that I can tell you is that you will want to reference the ID number that you get once you do this submission, but I would direct you back to your internal governance on what needs to take place specifically for you to submit your LAR.
Right, and we do have a couple slides later. We're not quite done the presentation yet. We're just done with the content overview. We still have a section on spectrum and submission, and we tie back to the LAR process on a later slide. Anyone else?
Not seeing anything right now.
What about raised hands?
Nope.
Hey, Dave, we did have a question come in about the deadline. Did I miss the deadline date?
So we submit our report on October 1st. Your deadline is based on when your LAR is due.
Very good.
And I have a note here that Rick Escamilla raised a hand, and I had a note earlier that Jennifer Lewis raised a hand. So I'm not sure if you guys aren't seeing the hand raising that I'm seeing.
So I do see Rick's hand raised right now. You guys are on mute. If you could, go ahead and type whatever your question is or any clarification that you're looking for into the Q&A panel.
Meanwhile, let's move on to spectrum, but we can go back and revisit any previous topic. Spectrum. I'm never going to get used to that spelling. Now, let's talk about spectrum access. Usually the IRM is the PCLS point of contact and allowing the data. But if you want other staff to work on it too, the IRM can delegate the questionnaire. And we'll show you how to do that in Spectrum. You can delegate any portion of the questionnaire. The account has to be active to receive notifications. And if you want to delegate to a new user who's not in the system yet, you can submit a support request in the system. Folks, that's almost always the best path. But we'll talk more about that in a minute. Or you can email grc@dir.texas.gov to set up that new user. If the account isn't active, you can't reset the password, but you can email grc@dir.texas.gov. If it's been 2 years, probably inactive. It's probably locked.
So real quickly, things in the chat, Dave. So the question or the clarification that we're looking for is whether or not how to enter has anything to do with what's being selected. And I'm not exactly sure how I'm interpreting that. So we'll push forward and see if any of the slides that we come to as we go through this answers that question. And then if not, we'll try to redress it.
It may be that, like, is there a special way to answer the questions which may enhance the chances of getting funded or something? I mean, I think the main point that I'd like to make on that is give as much information as you can. Answer the questions as clearly and explicitly as you can, and make sure your narratives are crystal clear. That gets fed into a formula, and then that formula turns into a recommendation. But there's no kind of magic to it.
Okay.
Spectrum
Thank
access. When you go to TDIS, you'll see the TDIS tile, and you log in with your single sign-on. Go ahead and select the PCLS tab on the navigation panel to access the PCLS dashboard. As an IRM, you should have access to it, and you can click the tile. If you can't see it, email that good old grc@dir.texas.gov address to get access. If you have a new staff member or want someone who does not currently have a Spectrum account to work on a questionnaire on behalf of your organization, click that support request from pretty much any page in Spectrum. So see, it's a support request right there on the top. And if you want to add an account, make them an IRM user if you want them to create a questionnaire. If you want them to just work on a questionnaire you've created, make them a general user. And then the IRM can delegate that specific questionnaire to them. As always, we have a team providing tech support. We're available to support you on this.
Hey, Dave, I'm going to interrupt one more time, real
Great.
quick. There was a question that was posted about how does the idea and demand ticket process connect to the submission. So idea and demand tickets are used by the STS program, the Shared Technology Services program, and idea and demand are utilized in ServiceNow. And that is completely separate from this. So we're not talking about any of that. Any information that you have in terms of project estimates or work estimates that you've gotten through the Shared Technology Services vendors, you will just take that information and submit that cost or relevant data from your quote into the Spectrum portal. So two totally different systems, two totally different things. What you'll do is take the information and the quote that you get and utilize that with your submission into Spectrum for the PCLS project.
It's a good question.
So there is another question, and we will get to this, Ms. Jennifer Buis. When you enter the PCLS record in Spectrum, does it create a project number that we should use to map it to the LAR? It absolutely does.
Great
And
timing.
yeah, that's gonna,
That's right. That's this very slide. Yeah.
I'll hand that
Yeah.
off to you,
Yeah.
Dave.
So regarding the records themselves, you can see at the top there's some general information about the submitter. If you plan to delegate out, you'll see at the bottom, there's that delegate to field with an ellipses. That'll show you a list of available users you can delegate to. And then they'll get notified that they can begin editing the record. You can also assign a reviewer who will need to see it before it's fully submitted. And then finally, this will hopefully answer your question, Jennifer. At the top there is the PCLS tracking key. You see it up there? It says PCLS underscore legislative session, in this case, 89, underscore your agency number, 313, 303, whatever, underscore the unique ID for that questionnaire. That's what's generated there. Now that's important. That needs to be inputted with the LAR so it can tie back to the project in Spectrum. Make a note of that key because you'll have to input that key into ABEST when you submit the LAR. I hope that answers the question.
Looks like you got that one answered. Thank you.
Lucky. So the submission process. So this slide here is actually a 30,000-foot view of the process, and it's not a bad recap at that. So first thing, identify the applicable projects and identify whether it's a cybersecurity or a legacy modernization project. As part of that process, associate the business applications which are impacted by the project. Once those business applications are tied to a PCLS funding request, ensure there's been an APM assessment in the last 4 years. If you haven't, you can't associate applications with that project request. So make sure there's been an APM assessment so you can relate the projects to the business application. So it's part of the formula for ranking. Questionnaires have a status. Once it's submitted, submit that PCLS tracking key to the LBB as part of your LAR. And then go back into Spectrum and update the status of that questionnaire to PCLS tracking key submitted to Legislative Budget Board. See, it's the next to last one there on the screen. So that way we know that tracking ID is going to show up when we correlate back to the LAR. In the questionnaire, put in the date it was submitted, and that should be the last step. Other than that, these statuses are pretty much self-explanatory. In some cases, you may be all ready to submit, and there's a change, or the project croaks, or it gets put on hold, or whatever. If that happens, you can change it to not submitted / archived.
Dave, would you mind, or Mark, would you mind backing up one slide for me really quickly?
And I got it. This one?
I'm sorry. Well, back to the APM slide.
The APM slide.
APM.
Um,
Get back to where you are. What I want to address is to make sure that we also note that when we
oh,
say
no.
Sort of similar to, things that are going on in the STS program and things that are happening with PCLS, again, two separate things. So when we're saying that you need to have an APM assessment that is less than 4 years old, yes, it is right here, Dave, thank you. That you need to have an APM assessment. This is going to be something that you're going to do within Spectrum. Again, this is totally different than when you think of APM in ServiceNow. So clarification about that. And as you go through and you have the instructions for completing the PCLS questionnaire, there's some good detail in there about how to add in and get your APM assessment within the Spectrum system. So again, completely separate from APM within the Shared Technology Services program.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you, Dave.
You're still in question mode. No more questions right now?
I'm not seeing any questions at this particular moment in time.
Well, that doesn't mean the party needs to end, folks. Because we're here to help you on this. So we work off the IRM list for communications. General inquiries has a PCLS mailbox that goes to DIR staff for content type questions, but tech support, such as passwords or a change of status, that'd be the grc@dir.texas.gov mailbox. If you can also open up a support request within Spectrum. Try that first. More info on this webpage here, the webpage you see on here, and we'll post this recording right here on DIR's YouTube channel. So finally, we're gonna have office hours to help you out. We'll have it at those times that you see there on the screen, and we'll send out a Teams meeting invite for the office hours on the Monday of that week. We try to do it at different times of day, and different days of the week to try to fit your schedule. So if you want to join us for office hours, please take a look at those times and dates there and find one that fits your schedule, because we are here to help you out.
Hey, Dave, there was one question
Yes, sir.
we have not answered yet
Okay.
from Amy Cook. If we submitted the same project during the last session and it was not funded, does DIR get feedback on why? No, that is between the LBB and the agency.
No.
We're not involved in that why.
Go for it again, though. Go ahead. Submit it again.
Hey, Dave, Rick had asked if he could come off mute. So Rick, you should have the ability to ask a question.
Hey, Rick.
Hello. Okay, so maybe we can have a separate conversation specifically with HHS, but so the challenge I have is that the LAR in the past has been specifically surrounding, initiatives, as well as capacity and all that aspect of stuff. So am I to understand that the only thing I have to do is, if I identify a PCLS effort, is identify that in a project tab and then put down the information from Spectrum, and then I'm done with that? There's nothing else I have to do as far as adding servers, software, or any other relationship to that, right? The LAR has all those aspects of services under those project tabs. That's the part I'm trying to understand. If it's very straightforward, between those two, then that's great. But if it's not, then I need to be mindful of that.
Okay.
Are you
Well,
following?
I think so.
What threw
go ahead,
me off
Robert.
was project tab. Well, what did you mean by project tab?
Okay, so I might be stirring the pot a little bit here. So I'm going to stop there to say, do we want to have a side conversation, or do we want to just have it here?
Let's have it here so everybody can benefit from it. If we can't answer it here,
Sure.
Rick, we'll take a note and we'll make sure that we get you the answer.
Right.
So-
So in the LAR, right, for all of us, we have a trends tab to adjust for any sort of capacity increases or softwares or things that are not really part of an initiative, we put there. And then for those things that do have an initiative or we plan to do a project for, then we have project tabs, right? We have the actual unit rates for all the aspects, and then we have the hardware aspect to that. Those two add up to one aspect of a project.
And
all
the
that
LAR,
cost,
right?
And the LAR, and all that rolls up into the cost for that specific initiative. So that way we know specifically that initiative is going to cost this much, which will add to the total aspect of the budget, right? From that aspect. Each one of these within that project tab has a selection for PCLS that I would select based on our understanding, right? And going through this process on the Spectrum side.
Okay.
So where I am confused and need some guidance is, now that we have identified things on this side of the fence that would need that, how do I identify that on the other side? Because whatever I do on that side incurs some aspect of cost, and I could be double dipping, meaning that DIR has already taken into account all of my infrastructure.
But
I already have a price for that, right?
So Rick, I
Yes.
think we may be getting, and anybody on the call, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think, so it is, I don't think you're double dipping. So the purpose of the PCLS is for DIR to collect all of the different legacy modernization and cybersecurity projects that are out there. What you're talking about, you're going to submit on your LAR. And then
Right.
the idea is that DIR is going to collect this and that we are going to we've got some formulas that we're going to run on the data set that provides a recommendation for prioritization. So this is not going to be actually submitting your projects. It's going to quantify and qualify where your project is among all of the other planned projects. And,
Okay.
and sort of a score, I don't want to call it a score right now, but sort of a prioritization rating, like where does it fall within everything that's being submitted? So I don't see it as a duplication.
No, right.
Submitting on
Okay.
the
No,
LLR.
that's great. That's great.
Agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that
No.
actually ties back to Jennifer's question about the key. The key is the connection between the PCLS and your LBB submission, right? Or your
Right.
LLM submission.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're not going to say, hey, Rick's asking for this money here and he's asking for it there. The LBB is your actual, the LAR is your actual administrative request. And the PCLS helps prioritize these types of projects.
Right.
Okay.
So use this to inform their decision about approving LAR requests for different things. And that's what this is.
Great
Okay.
question. Yeah, no, really good question.
Okay.
I see where you're coming from. You don't want to like ask
Right.
mom and ask dad, right? Yeah, I get that.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just and leave it for there right now. I mean, obviously we're just getting started with this. So I'm more than sure I'll have more questions, or maybe not. But if I do, you've got working hours, right, that you're showing here, I guess. And I'll just bring it to that once we get to that point. I think at that point I'll have better understanding and details to provide. Maybe you can give me guidance on if in fact that does happen. So
And
okay.
and I think, Rick, also when you go through the PCLS questionnaire and you answer all the questions in here, there's a bunch of cost questions in there, and it might become clearer as you go through the process.
No, that sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Good deal, man. Thank you.
Do appreciate that question, Rick.
Mhm.
I think other people probably had it as well. So thanks.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's fine. Yeah, because I'm in the midst of it right now, and
I'm glad.
we are definitely seeing some things that we put in there that we thought weren't being taken into account, and we're finding out that they are. So we're doing our validations now. I just don't want to revalidate if at all possible. Is all.
Makes sense.
But thank
man.
you.
Thank you. Any other questions? These questions are really benefiting everybody, right? So I'm glad they're coming. I'm glad we're asking them.
Hey, Dave, I had a quick question. For those who are filling out the assessment, especially who have never done one before, would it be of any benefit for them to refer to their previous completed assessment and kind of use that for guidance and sort of a template?
That seems like a good idea. Robert, are all the previous assessments available to them to look at?
They should be able to see their previous assessments. They can't make changes to it, but they can see.
Okay. And I think the cost would have changed. But yeah, good suggestion, Greg. Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else?
I'm not seeing any questions in the, but it may be one of those situations, which is why we have the office hours, because once we launch this PCLS, right, which will be today, and you guys can get in there and start looking at the form and what it looks like and the questionnaire, then I'm sure that you guys will have additional questions. And so that's what the office hours are for. We wanted to give you guys an overview of the process. But as you go through there, I would recommend starting the process to get those in there, and then joining the office hours. It's not limited just to office hours. You can always contact us. The email's up there, pcls@dir.texas.gov. Anytime you guys are working on it and you have questions, feel free to email us, and we'll do whatever we can to help you understand what's going on and to assist you in getting those submitted.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Right. All the questions we've received so far would have been good candidates for the PCLS@dir.texas.gov email address.
So there's another quick note. There's a good note in the chat that there's another important clarification regarding PCLS, that only projects requesting GR, general revenue, should be included. Anything 100% federally funded should not be included in the PCLS submission.
Right.
Thanks for that, Heather.
Okay. Thank you very much. I hope you join the office hours if you need to. And most of all, good luck.
Hang on one quick second. We got a last minute question.
Good.
How do you define project? So within this deck, as we go in the very beginning, when we went through, we have criteria for both a legacy modernization project and also a cybersecurity project. So thank you, Dave, for going back to that slide. So this is what, when we look at what that project is, you'll be looking at these criteria. And if it fits into one of these, either the cybersecurity or the legacy modernization, if it meets these criteria, then that is what we're considering a project.
Does that answer the question?
Last minute question. It looks like it has been answered. So thanks for going back to that slide.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now you can let everyone go.
Okay. I really don't want anyone to feel like they got short shrift. Because we are here to help with this throughout the entire process. But if that's it for now, don't hesitate to email at that PCLS@dir.texas.gov email for general content and PCLS questions. Don't hesitate to request assistance in Spectrum with that little button in Spectrum. If you're not doing that, you can email grc@dir.texas.gov. And then, of course, we'll have these office hours. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate your time.